Hey everyone. Welcome to another episode of We the First podcast. This episode is a little different as we tackle the conversation around mental health. And to help us have this conversation, I interviewed my dear friend Briana Wilson about her journey to mental wellness. Stay tuned after the interview for Affy and I's candid conversation. I'm Miriam.
And I'm Effie. And this is We the First,
where we're creating dialogue around our lives as first generation Americans
and the journey to breaking generational curses and traditions.
So listen up
and let's spark some conversation.
Before we get started with everything, I know me and you, we've known each other for a very, very long time. Almost 10 years or 10 years by now.
Nah, I think it's almost, I think 10 or 11.
Yeah, it's been a long time. We're getting old. Anyway. But for those that don't really know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Briana Wilson. I'm 26 years old. I'm a mother. I'm a student. I work, and I love to cook. Just all around busy, full plate.
Yes, you're always busy, but you're killing it at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah. So like I said, we've known each other since high school, and we've been through a lot together. With each other, we've seen a lot and been through a lot. But I want to ask you, how does mental health relate to you as a person?
Well, mental health relates to me as a person because I went through serious bouts of depression and anxiety. Even though I'm doing much better now, it's just made me more insightful on how it can impact someone. It made me open my eyes to like the other people's perspective and what they might be going through. So like things we see as like if someone's acting out, acting irrational, acting angry, it helped me connect with them in a way of maybe this person is going through something. So I think it definitely had a great impact on me.
Yeah. And when did you first notice, because you said you had a history with depression and anxiety, would you say that there were some first signs to it? Do you know when it began? Can you pinpoint like this is when I started to feel these things?
Well, I noticed something was wrong. I would say my freshman year of college. I was acting really irrationally. I was really like moody, upset. I felt like things were just, I couldn't cope with things that were normally things that people could cope with. That's when I noticed something was different. But if I can think of a starting point, looking back, I think I always exhibited these signs or these behaviors like high school, maybe even as early as middle school. When I look back. So I couldn't actually pinpoint a starting point, but when I noticed the signs, I would say it would be freshman year of college.
And when you first noticed the signs, what were your first thoughts? Did you automatically say, okay, I must be like depressed, or, oh, this must be anxiety? Like, what were your feelings? Did you think anything of it in the very beginning?
I actually did not. Like, it didn't occur to me until one of my roommates at the time brought up the idea of seeing a counselor. And like, it kind of like clicked at that moment. Like, maybe is there something wrong with me, like mental health? Maybe I should go see a counselor. But prior to that, I had like no inclination of what could be wrong with me. It didn't occur to me that this is depression, this is anxiety, because of what is, growing up, it wasn't really talked about as far as, you just have this ideal that someone who has depression or anxiety is crazy. You get straight jacket, you get, the bad stigma of psych wards and everything. So I didn't even, because that was my image of what depression, anxiety was, I didn't even think that I, had this issue.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that. It's like growing up, we don't think about those type of things, or no one talks to us about it. So that's not the first thing that's going to come to our mind. We're like, what is wrong with me? Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Am I going crazy? But there's actually a rationale to it. So it's interesting that you said that. So you said that your roommate mentioned you going to counseling. Did you end up seeking counseling at that point?
I did. It wasn't until after I had my first panic attack, which I
Mm.
had no idea what a panic attack was. So my roommate called 911 for me. I'm thinking, I'm dying. Something's wrong. I can't breathe. And once I, after what she said about seeking counseling and then doctors telling me I had a panic attack, that's when I decided, you know what, maybe I should start utilizing the counseling services on campus. And that's when I decided to make an appointment.
Yeah. Did it help? Do you think that counseling helped?
I definitely think it helped as long as I had the right counselor. So,
Mm.
you can have someone who's just, they are doing their job, but they just cannot be a match for you. Just like you would want a doctor
Yeah.
that's a match for you, you will want the same thing with your counselor. So I had some counselors who, I didn't care too much about, but I definitely had counselors who I really matched well with, and those counselors worked well.
Yeah. So at that time, you started to understand what you were going through. You seeked out counseling. Were you open with your parents at that point about what was going on?
Honestly, no. I think I went 2 years
Wow.
battling this before I decided to even open up to my parents about that. And it wasn't I didn't even open up into them until I actually committed myself to a psychiatric hospital for a couple
Mm.
of days. And even so, while in the psychiatric hospital, I remember, I think we were having you not tell my mother that I was there because I refused. And it wasn't until talking to the counselor there, they're like, you need, you know, family support as well in this. And that's when I decided to open up to my parents. So I actually battled this for 2 years before opening up to anyone in my family.
And that's a long time to go through something like that without talking to people that you're closest to, besides your friends and things like that. What made you not want to open up to your family? What made you not want to open up to your parents?
I felt like maybe they wouldn't understand because like I said, it wasn't a big topic discussed in my family. So I feel like, I would be labeled or stigmatized. So I didn't want to do that. I also didn't want to disappoint anyone, I guess, with that stigma. Disappoint, like, oh, Briana's in college, she's doing so well and everything. And then to hear that, I'm thinking about suicide and I'm, in a psychiatric hospital, I would think that they would start to be either disappointed or change their view of me. So
Mm.
I just hesitated to even bring it up until it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah, and I do remember in college where it was like you didn't want your mom to know, you didn't want your dad to know, but you also were very scared of them worrying about you, being too scared. Because I know your mom had to ended up coming up to the university for a little bit of time to be with you. Do you feel? Did you feel better when you opened up to your parents?
I actually did because once I did open up, because the psychiatric hospital wasn't releasing me in the 3-day time period unless I was released to a family member.
Mm.
But it was nice actually having my mother up there for the like you said, about I think maybe like 4 or 5 days. It was just nice being able to open up, not having to hide anything more. I feel like I was able to be myself with no extra burden on my shoulders on top of the carrying the burden of depression and anxiety. So it was actually great. And in turn, I actually after talking to my mother, it
Hmm.
started to get the gears rolling in her head, and she decided to start thinking like, you know what, maybe I suffer from depression and anxiety too. And from there, my mom also decided to seek counseling services.
You know what's funny? Like, I feel like a lot of our parents or like the generation before us, they kind of ignored the signs of things that they've went through because, like you said, it wasn't a thing, like thinking about mental health and thinking, oh, I might be actually going through something and making sense of it. I don't think they actually wanted to accept it for themselves. But we see it a lot. Like we see it in our we can look at one of our aunties or something like that and be like, this I think she's going through something, but she's probably never gonna accept that she's going through something. But I can't really blame them because it's not something that they know.
Right? It was just so taboo for them to even like like even seek those type of resources or utilize those resources, so
Yeah.
taboo that they weren't even able to pass that down to, our generation. So
Mm,
I'm happy that in a sense I kind of became the first person, like the catalyst in my family
you
for mental
did.
health. So now so many more people, like actually talking back, speaking of aunts, talking with my aunt. I remember maybe like a year or two ago, before when she was laid off and she was looking for a job, she was telling me how about long stints of being home, how it made her feel depressed. And I feel like she only opened up to me about this because she knew that I had a battle with depression. So I figured that in a way I kind of helped her too, because I feel like she wouldn't have told anyone about this prior
Yeah.
to my, stint with depression and anxiety.
Yeah, it's like you broke that barrier. You became that you became a first generation in that sense of breaking the walls and opening the doors to those possibilities. So kudos to you
Thank
for
you.
that.
Thank you. I'm so happy about that. So excited.
So in the beginning, um, that all of that happened, do you think that you're much more open about it now?
Oh, definitely. I like before all the, I was comfortable with talking about everything. I
Mm,
would hide it from like any and everyone who came across. And now if the topic of mental health come up, I'm the first person to discuss it. No embarrassment, no shame or anything, because I feel like once I reached out to those people and it stuck with them to utilize their research sources and open up, I feel like I can be the person that sticks in someone's head and be like, you know what?
yeah.
Let me utilize my resources. Let me talk to Briana. So I feel like now I'm just an open book about it. It honestly doesn't matter who it is. I have no issue telling, friends, family, of course if it comes up in conversation, but
Yeah.
it's definitely much easier for me because I learned to accept it.
Yeah, and you've knowing you personally, you came a long way. And I can also attest to it wasn't easy for you at all. That's why I always bow down to your strength, because I know I've seen where you've been and I see where you are now. Um,
Thank you.
so
Don't make me
yeah.
cry.
We're not going to get emotional today, girl. Not today.
Okay. Okay, maybe tomorrow.
So what do you think? Because I know nowadays or at this time that we're in is much more of a topic now. People are talking about it. It's not hidden. But do you think that there's still some stigmas around mental health that need to be broken?
Absolutely. Like I
Mm,
still think that, especially in the Black community, that people think that if you're too, dealing with anxiety, for example, people think you're too worrisome or too sensitive. It gives you that stigma that's like, oh, you're not strong enough. So I feel like that it kind of attests to strength for some reason
mm,
in in our community, as far as like, oh, if you can't cope with this on your own, or or you're not strong enough, or you bow down to the people like, wow, she does this on her own without seeking help, and
mm.
that's viewed as strength. So I feel like we have this like skewed perspective of strength when people uh think about mental health. So I definitely think that one of the top stigmas is people think that they're not strong enough when they have to utilize things such as medication or counseling services, when in reality the strongest thing you can do is help yourself, because mental health is still health at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you said that because that's really a thing. Like we don't think about, I think in the Black community and even in the African community, um, we don't try to make sense of our emotions. Like every emotion is something, if you're anything but okay or anything but what they see as normal, is like, what is going on with her? Like that's not, you shouldn't be sad for that, or you shouldn't be feeling like this for that. There's no explanation for it. And it's hard growing up. I know in the African community, for me, when I feel a certain way, I feel like I have to stop feeling that way. I feel like I have to be like, oh, I'm sad, but nothing happened to me, so why would I be sad? Or I don't feel like, I'm not in the mood today, but nothing happened to me, so why am I not in the mood? Instead of actually just saying, okay, I feel like this and I need to accept that I feel like this. And that's something that we definitely need to work on.
Definitely a like huge believer of that. I feel like people tend to like judge people when they don't view or experience things the same way that, you know, they would do it themselves. So like, for example, like you said, why do I feel sad? Someone like that, people tend to brush off people's feelings saying like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you should not be sad for that, because they wouldn't be sad for that. But people have to understand that people experience things differently, and they can't feel your feelings from you. You can only relate to someone through your own experience. So people tend to put their own experiences in someone else's shoes, and
Mm.
I feel like they end up judging people because they, oh, you should not feel this way, or you should
Yeah,
not do things this way. And I think that's one of the biggest problems also, as
I
far as
agree.
mental health too.
I agree. So in that sense, what is your response when people, or when you see things where people say, oh, mental health is not real, or certain things are exaggerated, you know, those skeptics, when there's people, because I've heard people say to me, like, there's no such thing as mental health, it's just something that was created um, to make people feel, or to justify certain things. So what is your response to that?
Well, my first response, I like hit it with a little bit of science, because technically, uh, depression or anxiety is a chemical imbalance in your brain. So it can happen at any point because, you know, it's situational, you know, something can cause your serotonin levels to drop. So I'll explain that how, you know, there's an imbalance in your brain, just like you would have something wrong with your liver, an imbalance in your liver, an imbalance in your heart, and it requires medical attention. So I'll hit them with that, but I also would tell them that the key word in mental health is still health.
Hmm.
And you wouldn't walk past someone who fell down and broke their leg right in front of you. You would tend to them, you would get them a cast, you know, call 911, do anything that is needed to help that leg heal. And I feel like I will tell them the same thing. You know, in order for my brain to heal, I need to seek counseling. I may need to take medication that balances my hormones temporarily, or, you know, permanently, depending on the person. So
Hmm.
I'll just explain to them how the health aspect is still the same as physical health, and that is, it's not fiction.
Yeah, I think that that's beautifully put. Look at you with your words and your diction and all your and everything.
You know, I
Yeah.
try. I try.
But yeah, that is perfect, because I've heard it plenty of times, especially in the African community. Someone even said to me that they don't think that there's anyone in Africa that has mental health issues. And it's like, what? How is it possible that the no one in the whole continent has ever dealt with some type of mental health issue, or like, everyone has dealt with things mentally. So how are you? I don't know. I'm not even going to get into it because
It's
that's a
mind-boggling now. You're like,
yeah, that's just another whole conversation. That's things that you don't even get too deep into because it makes no sense. But the last thing I want to ask you is, what do you think? What are some things that you want to do? Because I know you have your son, and what are some things you want to do with him that's different than what was done with you, and some things that you would like to see for people to do with the future generations?
some things I would do personally with my son is always encourage talking. I feel like we don't do enough talking to our children to understand them. It's like parents just implement, this is what I say goes, this is how you should feel, this is how you're going to feel about this situation. So I feel like that kind of mentally mess you up, because, you know, you're branching off of that. It's now I can't talk to my mother and father because, you know, they told me how I should think, how I should feel. And now, you know, there comes a time when you really, really need me and you don't feel as though you can reach out to me. So one thing I'm big on is talking, really talking to my child. Even though right now it's being mad over Legos and fire trucks, I try to emphasize, you know, instead of saying you shouldn't be mad at that fell, I ask him, why are you upset? And give him a chance to tell me why he's upset, not why I shouldn't think he's upset, because our
Mm.
experience is different. What, you know, a fire truck falling over may not be a big deal for me as an adult, but in a 3-year-old's world, that fire truck falling over is the end of the world. So I just feel like personally implementing talking is a good thing. For the future generations, um, especially for men, I feel like we should teach them to embrace their feelings, actually feel their feelings. A lot of people are emotionally challenged because they weren't allowed to feel how they're supposed to feel, especially men, because of that skewed view of masculinity. So if I feel this way, it infringes upon my masculinity. So I definitely think we should like trying to tear the barrier down with that and start letting people just feel their emotions as human beings, not as, oh, you're a man, you're not allowed to feel upset about this, that, and the third. So I definitely want to, bash at the fragile masculinity barrier and let everyone be able to feel how they're supposed to feel, how they want
Yes.
to feel rather.
Yes. I love all of that. And I know that for me personally, I like to use you as like a catalyst for things like that. It's like sometimes when I'm dealing with my twins, I'm like, what would Brianna do in this situation? She would not yell at them right now.
Are you sure?
I'm like, I know she probably will, but like, should I?
My sister always tells me that I'm very patient. Don't get me wrong, I yell every day.
Yeah.
But
We're not
it's a
perfect.
build up. I don't I don't yell. I don't always yell immediately. And one thing I always do make a note to do is apologize to my son when I'm wrong or when I
Mm,
feel like I acted out of proportion. Like, this response didn't, call for this level of severeness. So just
mm.
yesterday, I yelled at him for picking up something off the table that he shouldn't have touched. But I realized that the amount of yelling that I did wasn't really the, correct level for that response. So I did call him back, apologize, explain the dangers of why he shouldn't touch that, gave him a hug, and, we're back to that. So normalize apologizing to your kids when you're wrong.
I think that's strength. And that's also like kudos because that's not something that I don't think our parents can do that.
No, I don't think I was apologized to. It was I got
Like,
yelled at, and then they try to they try to like win me back just by starting a conversation with
yeah,
me.
or like you hungry?
You hungry? That was a big one. I'm ordering food. Do you want something? You just yelled at me to smithereens an hour ago, and you didn't even call for that.
To smithereens. No, but seriously, like that's something that not a lot of people have the strength to do because they see it as weakness. And it's like you can still apologize to your child for, you know, or admitting when you're wrong. That's teaching them a lesson. But at the same time, teaching them that what they've done is wrong. So I love all of these lessons. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your insight and your story because I think that your story alone can help a lot of people. So thank you for being open.
Well, thank you for having me.
Dang, so that was a good interview. Like, I really, really like that. That shed light on a lot of things that I didn't know about her situation, especially with her being around all the time. Like, that's like an older sister to me. Like, y'all were best friends for the longest, so that showed me a lot of things I didn't know before, and like, is a she made a lot of growth. Like, I could see her. She's way more radiant now. She seems happier. She seems healthier. But like, how did you feel doing that interview? Like, or afterwards, after the interview?
Um, I mean, so honestly, when I think about it, the only overwhelming feeling I had while doing the interview is like, because we talked about the journey from the beginning all the way to now. And I'm just happy to see where she is. Like, that's how I felt the whole time. I just had an overwhelming happiness and like kind of a gratefulness for seeing how far she's come. Because she's been through a lot and she's definitely overcome a lot of what she's been through. So I guess and I was happy that she did the interview because her story could resonate with a lot of people.
No, definitely, because like I didn't really know much about depression or anxiety and things like that until Brianna was like became a part of our lives. Like I didn't really know much about that. Especially living in an African household, they disregard things like mental health. So I didn't really know anything about mental health at all. That's crazy. Like I remember my first introduction to mental health through her, I had to be at least like 15, 16 years old. And that's a good enough age to be able to like know what mental health is, or most people discover what mental health is before that, when they live in certain
Right.
environments or whatever. But I didn't have no, like, when people went through things emotionally, just the minimum of being emotional, like not
Mm-hmm.
even mental health, like just the minimum of being emotional in an African household wasn't allowed. So I just felt that like what is this mental health thing? This is strange. This is something. Okay, let me go look into it. I looked at it as like maybe some type of scientific type crazy type stuff. Like I never really understood.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting you said that, because at one point, in the interview, she was talking about how she became she broke that barrier for her family, because she's kind of like, she's broke a curse in a way by opening up about her mental health and seeking help for her mental health and understanding it. So when you said that, it makes me think like she didn't only break barriers in her family, she broke barriers even for us,
Right.
like for us to even think about mental health in a way that we've never thought about it before. And even like, because she's very close to our family and our parents, like even, our parents wanted to understand it and make sure she was okay. And they always felt like they had to ask me, like, how is she doing now? Is she better? And they're actually recognizing that she has a mental health condition. She has something that is beyond her, you
Like you
know.
said, it's literally health. Like she said, a lot of people disregard the fact that they disregard the word health when it comes to the whole thing of mental
Mm-hmm.
health. Like this, just as much, like she said, just as much as you will have a health problem with your heart or your liver or whatever, it's like that is internally. You don't have control over it from the outside. So if you have a heart problem, you can't heal it from the outside. You got to heal it from the inside. And it's really a chemical imbalance. Like I learned that from her, that mental health is
Mm-hmm.
literally something within that's a chemical imbalance, something that's a
Me
health
too.
problem. That's not something that's made up. Mental health is not something that's made up. Mental health is not something that's 100% just off of emotions. It doesn't
Yeah.
work that way.
And I like how she mentioned how like she didn't want to tell her parents in the beginning, or she wasn't really comfortable with talking about it because of the stigma around it. And like the stigma of crazy, or like this person is in a psych ward or whatever. Like it made me think about what the stigma is in the African community because I don't think there's a stigma.
No.
I think that in the African community there's kind of a non-existence of it. Like they just don't acknowledge it, that it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't think there's any stigma around it within the African community. I think that they just believe that mental health is non existent. Like it's something that's just made up, that it's an American thing. Like it's a civilized or person that's deep in their self thing type thing, you know?
That's
So
weird too.
like
Like an
it's,
American thing.
yeah, like it's not, that's the thing, like it's a lot of people in Africa like that has mental health issues, but like you said, I think one time you told me about somebody saying that they think that mental health doesn't exist in Africa at all. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, what is that? Like, but yeah, it's but I feel like now, like I don't know if you agree with this, but I feel like now um I don't think there's so much of a stigma as it was before around mental health here in America, like, than it was before. I feel
Mm.
like it was worse before because when you had a mental health issue before, you would just be labeled as crazy. But now some people are able to recognize their peers and the people around them that might have depression or anxiety or something else going on. Like they understand the reactions of their friends and stuff like that because of mental health. So
Yeah.
it's just
No,
like,
I
but what
definitely
like what
think
you think about that? Do you think it's still a stigma?
no, I think like she said it perfectly. Like she said that it's better. You know, it's getting better. People are definitely talking about it now, no doubt. But I feel like there's still some stigma around it. Like, and I love how when I asked her what kind of stigma or what things, I can't remember the question. It was like, what things would you like to see differently with mental health? And she was saying that she wished that more men will be in touch with their feelings and like men will, she said like men will feel your feeling or like not be too emotionally challenged. And I thought that was interesting because that is a stigma. There is still a little bit of a stigma around men being men and not allowed to have feelings. And I think that's even huge in the African community because even when they talk about little things like talking about dads not showing emotions to their kids, like even just thinking about
They
that,
think it's normal.
yeah, like they find it so weird to, not all of them, not all of them, but there is this kind of culture around dads not being too close to their kids or showing too much emotion to their kids or being too open with their kids. And I think deeply it has something to do with being a man and not opening up and not showing that you actually have emotions other than seriousness.
Yeah, or being that just the sole provider and I'm taking care of this and I'm holding the fort down. Like, and like,
Yeah.
especially the thing with like, even in America here, like, disregard like the whole African thing. From the time a little boy is young, if you fall on a bike or something small happens,
Man up.
they'll be like, the mom, I had a situation where I would see moms comforting their son and they'd be like, leave him alone, he's a boy. Leave him alone. Don't be trying to baby him. He's a boy. Like, he need to stop crying. Like, I just saw that last week. I think a baby like fell, and the person was like, "Let him go. He'll shake it off. He's a boy." But the little girl, a couple minutes ago, the little girl fell. Oh my God, what's wrong? What happened? Let me see. If it's a little girl, they
Yeah.
catering to you. But or when little boys do little things, if they dance a little certain way, they be like, "No, he's a guy. Stop." Like, it was like, oh, he wants something. He start like things kids do. Like they want something, they start fussing about it. And if the little boy cries and fuss about it, they be like, no, no, he don't need to be fussed about it. Tell him stop crying. Little girl fuss about it. Oh, give it to her, give it to her. And it's like
Yeah. No,
that. It
that's the
starts at a
thing.
young
And
age.
yeah, it's those little things that start. And when thank you for saying starting at a young age, because that made me think about also how she said you know, she noticed signs of depression early on but didn't label it as depression.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think of like, what if her parents were educated and stuff like that, or her parents knew to like kind of pay attention to those type of things? Would it have been different? Like, what do you think? Do you think that if parents actually know to look for these type of things, would it be better or would it be any different as far as how they deal with it
Definitely, I
or
feel
how
like
the child
if
deals with it?
if parents knew about those type of things, if they were aware of mental health, like she said, she does things differently for her son, right? And the thing that she's doing differently with her son is for the better, and it's for a better outcome. So like my whole thing is like just like she said, talking to your child or understanding their feelings. Like she said, when something happened to his fire truck, he might cry, but don't underestimate what it did to him because it hurt him at the end of the day. Like, so you got to acknowledge the feelings that a person is, because at the end of the day we're all human, child, adult. We gotta understand each other's feelings, you know. So the whole thing of like, if I feel like if her parents were more aware, or if parents of children that have mental health disorders or parents that understand mental health, it'll be a much better outcome because they'll be more attentive, and then the end result would be less destructive.
I
So
agree. And not only recognizing mental health, but just acknowledging your child's emotions. Like, I think that can make a huge difference in a child. Like, just talking to them, trying to understand why they're upset. If it doesn't make sense to you, it makes sense to them for some reason. I know, like, growing up, you didn't want to be in a bad mood sometimes because they're going to be like, eh, Gina de balatui. Or then
Yes.
they'll say something like, she's in one of her moods. Let's leave her alone. She's just one of her moods.
Oh
And they
my
kind of
God.
disregard your feelings. And that can, like, just think about it. Like, it brings you, like, PTSD or something. Like, but it was real. And I feel like those type of things kind of groomed us to not want to show our emotions too much. Like, if I get into a mood, I want to deal with it by myself because I feel like if I express it, it's going to be like, oh, you've always been like that. You just always get, just have your moments. And you just, like, there's a reason. There's a reason for every emotion. And we're so conditioned to disregarding people's feelings. And just because we don't understand it, it's so easy for us to say that whatever they're going through is not important. So I think there'll be something that could help with us knowing as a young generation, passing it on to future generations, just using that skill and not continuing to do it to our children, but rather learning from it and doing better.
Right.
Talk to your kids, ask them why they feel a certain way.
Just
Let
because
them
you don't
think through their thoughts.
Right. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that it's nothing. Doesn't mean that they don't have a right to feel the way they feel. Just because you don't understand it. Like, you gotta embrace that emotion. That's why even with females, a lot of females grow up being emotionless, like, or just growing up having to brush things off their shoulders, or they don't want to cry because they feel weak if they cry. Like, it's wild.
And we're so well, I would say in the African community, we're not supposed to feel certain ways about certain things. Like, certain things that people say to you, you're not even supposed to feel a certain way about it. And they like to say it's because we're soft.
Yeah, they'll say like, "Oh, you got a tender heart or whatever." Like, you do suka bon. Like, or they'll say like, you so sensitive. Like, even, and especially with the weight thing too. Like, they'll say, "Oh, you getting too skinny or you getting too fat." You don't know if the person is depressed or whatever the case may be. You coming up always
or what they going through,
identifying them or calling them out on their appearance, but you don't know what they're going through. Like, we all have mirrors, we can see ourselves, but like, you make things worse. Or if you tell somebody, like, I've seen situations where somebody open up to somebody and say, "Oh, they're depressed, da, da, da. Oh, I give you everything, you have this, you have that, you have this. Oh, all your life I did this. Your father provides for you, mother provides for you." All of, just like finding excuses to disregard the fact that their child has depression or anxiety. But or they make it to seem like it's based off of the way things they did or things that's going on in their lives. But it's like, no, it's really a mental health problem. Like, it's really something that I need to see a doctor about.
Well, so at one point, Briana said she ended up going to therapy, but she didn't tell her parents for 2 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, like, and that just says a lot within itself. Like, do you think you would tell your parents if you ever wanted to go to therapy?
Hell no. Even if
you wouldn't?
Even with me personally, like, I know I'm not diagnosed with mental health or anxiety or anything like that, but I feel like everybody needs therapy for anything and everything. Like, everybody needs therapy for something. Like, but I would never tell my mama. Like, I would never tell I would never tell nobody. I'm like any elder that I go to therapy. Any auntie, uncle, mommy, daddy, I'm not telling them nothing. Like, because they're going to be like,
I agree with you.
You can't talk to me. They're going to be like, you can't talk to me. Especially, like, you can't tell me I'm supposed to be your friend. Like, you can't talk to me. We here for you. But it's like, you're not going to understand or receive it the way a therapist would, like a certified doctor would. You know what I'm saying? Or like I just would never do that. Like don't, because they gonna
I
label me as
agree.
crazy, or they gonna try to, anything that happens around the house they gonna be like, oh, that's because you seen a therapist. Like that's why you seen a therapist now. You mad at me, you rolling your eyes, you suck your teeth, that's why you seen a therapist now. So it's like, nah, I'm good.
That's so true. That's so true. Because, and I agree with you. Like, I really probably wouldn't tell anybody. Like, because, like you said, it's going to put you in a box. And this just shows how far we are from understanding emotions, understanding mental health. And it's not like it doesn't exist. It's there, but we just putting a blanket over it. Like our parents, they've never really had to address those type of situations. It's just you either normal or you crazy. And if I was like, I'm going to therapy to talk to someone about my problems, you don't need to pay anybody to do that.
Or you just being extra.
What are you, crazy? Are you bipolar? Are you schizophrenic? You got anxiety? You got your anxiety? You anxiety? Like, it's just not going to be an easy conversation. And
or you just being dramatic. Like,
yeah. And they're just gonna they're just gonna try to find something tangible to blame it on.
You know how I get. Everybody in this house think I'm bipolar, and they just think I just be extra and I'm just dramatic. But it's like, no, I got the right to feel the way I want to feel. Don't tell me I'm extra or dramatic. I'm going to dramatize if I want to dramatize. Like.
Yeah, I don't think we're at a place where we can be comfortable enough. I think we have a friend, a very close friend that goes to therapy, and they just don't tell their parents about it. And I would do the same thing.
Agree.
I don't think we're in a place yet where we could say to our parents, personally, I don't think we're in a place where we can say to our parents that we're going to go to therapy. Maybe there are some parents out there, and that's good.
Yeah, like the thing I learned from that too is that even when they do hide from their parents that they go to therapy and stuff like that, that could benefit the parent as well, because when you go to therapy, you learn reasons behind your actions, reasons behind your parents' actions and things like that. So you'll be able to handle situations better. Like you'll be, without them knowing you're going to therapy, they might be like, oh, something's changing about you. But you ain't got to know where I learned that from. So, but it'll be beneficial to them too, or you can help them figure out what's wrong with them.
That's
like
true.
Briana said, she helped her mother figure out what was going on with her.
Yep. And, she was able to acknowledge whatever was going on with her too.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have so many, we can even pinpoint, if anybody just sit down and think about it, you can probably pinpoint someone in your family that's probably going through something mentally. But they don't want to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Or no one's going to acknowledge it. It's just going to become that person. Yeah, it's just going to become that person. Like, that person is crazy. That person is this, that person is that. It's not going to be dissect into what it could really be. But I really loved this conversation, and I'm glad that she was willing to do the interview and break down what she went through, because it sparked a lot of ideas and thoughts in my mind. And progress.
Right. I love to see her progress. I really do. It's crazy. It's like a 360. And then but seriously though, like a thing I think about a lot is the people that support the people that have mental health issues, the people that help them, like their spouses, in your case your best friend, brothers, sisters, and things like that. Like, how did that, like, being in the time with that dark period with her and being by her side and being there and not ever experiencing mental health on that level, how was that? Like, what did you learn from that?
Ooh, I've never been asked that question. I learned a lot about, of course, what it means to be in her shoes. Of course, I'm never going to know exactly what it was like to be in her shoes, but I saw it like firsthand, and it wasn't easy. I'm not going to say it was easy from my point of view. But I think the only reason why it wasn't easy is because I cared so much about her and her well-being that I didn't want to give up on her. Because if I wanted to give up on her, I could just be like, you on your own. And I didn't always have the answers, which was kind of like rough in the beginning, because in the very beginning, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know the right things to do. But, you know, her journey helped me grow as a person too. Learning how to be there for somebody in a beneficial way. So I learned a lot, but it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's because I cared about her well-being. I didn't want to leave her hanging. So, you know, when you want to be there for somebody like that, you have to be in the work. You have to put in the work. If you want to be there for somebody you care about and they're going through something, you're going to have to put in the work too, to make sure that whatever they're going through, you're there for them. You're making sure that they're okay. Because if I didn't care, it wouldn't be difficult at all.
Yeah, and also you took from that to be more attentive with certain people, because I've had close friends with mental health disorders. I never been put in a situation like you where I had to like really put my all into it, but I learned to be more attentive to other people's feelings off of that. Like, I learned that the way I feel about the level of them being distraught is not my business. Like, that's not they feel the way they feel. Like, I can't rate it from 1 to 10. Like, I dropped my phone off a 12-story building. She dropped her phone out the window of a 1-story building. It still fell. Like, the outcome is different for the both of us. Like, so.
And how we're going to deal with it is going to be
different. Yeah, we feel things differently. I could just be like, oh, I'm going to brush it off. Oh, this is all I got right now. Like, she's probably going to take it harder. Oh, this is all I got right now. So I learned to be more attentive with people, more patient.
Yeah. And everything is a learning opportunity. We don't expect everyone to have the answers to everything. And of course, no one's going to have the answers to everything unless you insert yourself and try to figure out those answers, because it's not going to fall on your lap.
Yes. Yeah, and also seek therapy, man. Like, feel like you need it, seek therapy. There are resources. It might be hard to find it as an African American. It might be hard to find it as an African child, but there are resources out there. So,
and even if it's easy to find it as an African child, it might be hard to want to get up and do it.
Yeah, no, seriously, it's not.
We can easily tell people seek therapy, but even for us, for me, it's not going to be easy for me to just get up and say I'm going to seek therapy.
No.
There's going to be a lot of layers. It's not an easy
process, but it's necessary though. Like,
it's not an easy process. It's necessary. Yeah. But thank you for tuning in to this episode. It was nice to talk about something that is not always talked about, and especially during these times where there's so much going on in the world. Sometimes we need to just take a seat back and acknowledge our feelings and understand what's going on up there. So if you have any questions or you just want to continue the conversation, you can find us at We The First Podcast on Instagram, and you can email us at wethefirstpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you guys for tuning in. It's been real.